When Kalen DeBoer first showed up at Alabama, one of the biggest questions asked about him, I think fairly, by those in Tuscaloosa or beyond, given his track record and where he was coming from geographically, was how is he going to be able to recruit? What's it going to look like? Can he stay at the same level? And I think a reasonable response was, well, you can't expect him to be at the Nick Saban level. You can have as much success as you want. You're not Nick Saban. At least not yet. Until you win half a dozen national championships, you're not Nick Saban. It is different when you're talking to a recruit and his parents, and you are sitting there with 6 national championship trophies to your name. So you're never going to bring that level of recruiting to Alabama. I just don't see that taking place. But this is also the transfer portal era, and Kalen DeBoer, oh boy, he might be getting a big name here. Do you remember when Kalen DeBoer lost 2 guys from his coaching staff? I do, because I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. And Coach Huff and Coach Grubb are currently on Mike McDonald's staff in Seattle. I'm very happy about that, if you cannot tell. For those listening on podcast, I gave a little fist bump in the air and just gave another one because I like those guys. I think they're really good coaches. So when you look at that track record and what they have done, what they have had to do rather on their coaching staff, moving Nick Sheridan to the offensive coordinator position, would you expect that Kadyn Proctor is thinking about transferring to Alabama? Report came down from On3 Sports, and Josh Pate tweeted this out as well, that when the spring transfer portal window opens, Kadyn Proctor is expected to transfer back to Alabama. Remember, there are no rules against a 2-time transfer, and I believe there was a lawsuit that might still be percolating throughout the courts about there being any restrictions on players entering the transfer portal, which I'll go on record by saying I don't think is an equitable arrangement between the university and specifically the coaching staff and the players. I don't think, barring a departure of the coaching staff, that's a great arrangement. I think that is putting way too much stress on the coaches and the program and whatnot, because players are just free agents every year. There's no sport. There's no professional sport. You talk about the professionalization of college sports. It's just becoming pro sports. Well, guess what you can't do in professional sports? Just leave whenever you want. You're obligated to show up. You're not a free agent after every year. No one signs a 1-year deal all the time. Sometimes they do, but there's a contract and everyone knows it's a 1-year deal. And so, these guys might say, oh, I'm coming here for college and all this sort of, and then they might bounce after a year for various reasons. But anyway, I digress. Kadyn Proctor was the number 1 offensive tackle in the country from the state of Iowa. Went to Alabama, started last year on Bama's offensive line that went to, need I remind you, the college football playoff semifinal, won the SEC. After the year, he was a transfer portal departure, decided to go back to his home state. I'm going to go back and be a Hawkeye. And of course, somebody like that fits in the Big Ten. How could he not? They're about running the football, physicality, winning in the trenches. And now the reports are that he's going to transfer back to Alabama. I can't think of a scenario with a player off the top of my head in which someone, and not just someone, the most highly coveted class of 2023 offensive tackle goes to a school, starts every game, goes to the playoff on that team, transfers, and before he plays at that new school decides, I'm going to take this second transfer portal window and go back to the school that I originally left. Now, this hasn't happened yet. This is just reported. And Josh Pate tweeted out something that's even crazier, which is that Kadyn Proctor going back to Alabama isn't even in the top 3 craziest transfer portal stories that he has heard so far. Excuse me? Excuse me. Josh Pate does as good a job as anybody, I think, covering college football, talking about the sport. He's a very well-sourced individual. He's not tweeting that out to rile people up. He's not tweeting that with clickbait. If he's saying something, it's because he is hearing it from people who are in the know. But this entire concept of a transfer to go back to the school he came from before he ever even got going in spring football in a significant way, before he ever even took a snap for the team that he transferred to, is absolute. Don't make this something that your eyes gloss over on Twitter. This is bonkers. That's absolutely bonkers. And I think that it is a testament to what Kalen DeBoer clearly is doing. You wonder whether he's going to prioritize acquiring high-level talent. Well, here you go, Alabama fans. If he's able to pull this off, it would arguably be a better recruiting victory than getting Ryan Williams, a 5-star plus wide receiver who decommitted and DeBoer got to recommit. That Scarlet A in Crimson means something to people, and Kalen DeBoer is reminding everybody about what he has done as a college football coach at a place that has certainly reached the heights of college football, had made the playoff once before in the 4-team era, and DeBoer did it. They'd never played for a national championship game. They've got national championships that they claim up there in Seattle from way back when, because with Don James, they were at that sort of level. They have a co-national championship with the Miami Hurricanes in 1991. That sounds right. Anyway, Husky fans might blast me for that, but pretty sure it's 1991. Washington had never been to a national championship game before. Had you had that system or any system like it back in 91, yep, Washington would have been there. Absolutely. But in the modern era, they had not reached the game, and DeBoer brought them there. And I think people are starting to realize how good of a coach he is. And he is starting to understand what sort of recruiting power he's got with that Alabama head coach moniker, with that label saying, I'm the head coach of the University of Alabama. And if he pulls this off, it is a feather in his cap. It's an important roster piece for 2024 because they had departures along the offensive line, but Proctor was one of them. And if you get that guy back and re-plug him into an offensive line that's got Parker Brailsford at center and a number of other good pieces, suddenly Jalen Milroe could have a really good running game. He could have time to throw the football. And I think there are some questions that are fair about the Alabama receiving corps. Talked about that earlier this week with Luke Robinson of Locked On Alabama. But I think that for the Crimson Tide to be in this position right now is starting to answer the question, how's Kalen DeBoer going to recruit? Well, you can talk about his high school recruiting and say, well, it won't be as good as Nick Saban. But he clearly understands how to use the transfer portal if he is able to pull this off. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.